Well, my name is Peter. I'm an alcoholic. Um, Thank you, Sean, for thinking of me 7 some years later, I think. Um, I haven't seen Sean for that long, and he remembered my talk from that long ago, and um, still sober, still living life. And I always get nervous, like everybody does. I think when you get to do this because you're exposing your life and being vulnerable with who you are. So I started my recovery in 1994. I was 18 years old. I got waived over from children's court. I was facing 7 felonies and 16 misdemeanors. And most of my youth was spent pretty much from 11 years old to 17 in and out of boys' homes, shelter care, detention centers, foster cares, on the streets. And fifth grade, it was the last grade I actually graduated. Every grade after that, I got booted out of pretty quickly. Um, and it's it's an interesting thing, like when you're that young and you're looking up. Somebody asked me recently, like, how could you possibly look at your life at 18 and say, "Oh, I'm going to get sober now"? How could you possibly see that you needed to do that? And the only thing I could say is, so I'm shackled up. I'm getting waved over to adult court, and I'm sitting there in this courtroom, and this judge is sitting there in front of me. And for me, like, I skipped over the using, right? Because obviously that's just like part of my life. Like, I didn't even hesitate or think about, was I hooked? I knew, and I didn't care because it was the only thing that I could do in my life that made me feel half normal. It was the only thing. So I'm get just using is just part of life. So now I'm committing crimes and doing these other things and blah, 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 and I end up getting shackled, and I've been arrested hundreds of times by this point for all sorts of silliness. And I'm getting shackled up, hands together, down to with a shackle going down to your feet, and those are shackled, and you got to put the red jumpsuit on, and they bring you over to the main jail. And I was 17 years old at that time, and I sat in the hole for 90 days because I was separated from the population because I was underage. So I'm sitting in the hole for 90 days. And at this point in my life, something's different, and I can't really put my finger on it, except that I started to see, like, I can't describe besides like flashes of my life were in front of me for what it could be, but also what had happened. So I seen the people that had reached their hand out so many times. I saw it in my mind's eye, like they tried to help me. And then I also saw those people, and we've all seen them, like, walking around. They wake up and they just live life. They just do this normal thing. And I remember looking at them in awe when I was, using, and I'd just be like, how do they do that? How do they just wake up and go about life? How do they go about that? How do they do that? It didn't make any sense to me. And but that those images came in my head, and the kindness that people really tried to show me. And then here I'm sitting in the cell for 90 days, and I'm like, I'm facing 60 years. And there's these people who are in, when you're in jail and you're in the hole like that, you can stick your head on the floor and you can scream out under the door, and you can talk to each other. You have to put your head on the cement, and you could talk. And they sat there and talked all day long, screaming back and forth at each other about how cool they are and what they're going to do when they get out. And I'm still a kid, in many rights. And so I'm thinking, these are the guys that have always been my hero. These are the tough people. These are the strong people. And they're talking in now in some way that I feel is just stupid. It's just, you're going to prison, guys. You're locked up. We're stuck here. This could be the rest of our lives. And I thought, maybe those people who got up and just did life normally, maybe I could be like them. Maybe. maybe I could wake up, maybe I could change, maybe I could wake up and just go to life and do it. How to do that? I don't know, but I thought I had this image in my head, and I knew that since I knew I was hooked, so I knew I would have to stop using, and I'd never had that thought in my life before. Soon as I had that thought that I might have to stop using, I also had this other thought, which is I might be better off dead. It literally was the first thing that went through my head when I thought I'm never going to use again. That was a potential of my life because it was such a scary concept. And so I'm going into this, and I dove right into it when I got into jail. They, instead of like me going for 60 years, I sat in front of the judge and I told her what was happening in my head and in my person. For some reason, this lady believed me and she sentenced me to 2 years. 10 years stayed, 6 years probation. I made up my mind in those moments when I was sitting in that cell that I was going to do anything I could, anything to change my life, whatever I had to do. And from there, I ended up going to every single meeting in the jail that I possibly could. I asked for help at every single turn I could in the jail. I got the big book. I sat down and started just reading it. It wasn't until I actually got out of jail and I went through the book with people in the program that it really started to actually click and change my life. And that's when the steps took hold. And it was probably like I was out of jail for about a year, and I started to walk through the steps with this sponsor. And so we only have a short time, so I'm not going to walk through all those steps. But um, the basics of what they were so simple when it was boiled down. I confused the hell out of it in my own head. And soon as it was boiled down to these simple, basic things, and I walked through it and completely surrendered, because by this time I'm like 3 years sober, right? 3.5 years or something. I was in jail and now I'm out, and I was still clean, but I was crazy inside myself. One, I've never lived life before. I never had a concept of what to do with life. I didn't know where I was going, and I had no foundation of any of it, like what to do except what I was trying to get out of that book. And once that guy took me through it, but I completely surrendered from the inside and said, I'll do whatever it takes. I saw that there was this funny thing when I walk into a room, there's all these feelings and thoughts and all this stuff that would go through me. I'd go into an AA room or in any room, anywhere. And I'm thinking, oh, they're thinking this about me. They're thinking that about me. And it wouldn't stop. It wouldn't stop. It didn't matter how much I tried to control my life, it wouldn't stop. And I realized it was so clear in these moments. And the funny thing is like there's these, so that was 94. So that was 26 years ago, right? When I got sober. There's these moments of surrender throughout my recovery that changed my life. They changed my life. And this is one of them where I saw that all of that was coming from me. All that talk, all that stuff was starting here. It wasn't starting out there. These folks in front of me, these people had nothing to do with what was happening here. And when I read the steps and I started walking through them with my sponsor at that time, I saw so clearly what I could do to change that. And the steps literally one by one unfolded how this and this started to connect with the world, and how I can realign myself over and over and over and be a different person after I learn whatever lesson I have to learn. And that's those new surrenders. Because it's not like, oh, you got sober, everything's great. No, I still need to grow up. I was a child. I still needed to learn who I was, how to live life, how to wake up, how to be responsible. Did I even want to be responsible? Slack off sometimes, not slack off other times. Go back and forth between levels of, it's a pendulum for me, at least, that it's gone back and forth between obsessing and non-obsessing and being in the middle of the road, back to this, where slowly that pendulum started to go less and less. So now 26 years, I'm a couple decades in, right? Like I'm it's been a long time, and that pendulum gets less and less, and it's slower. It doesn't swing so abruptly. It doesn't go so far over. And now I can look back on those mistakes that I made through sobriety, in sobriety, and know how not to do it today from an emotional understanding of how lesson learned. Like a regular person, like those people that I saw in my mind's eye when I was sitting in that cell that would go to bed, wake up, go live their life, and they're content. Who the F are these people? How do they do that? Well, now I'm one of them. Like, I wake up, I live my life, I do my thing, and most times I'm pretty content. And that's what this gave to me. That's what AA gave to me. This is where it all started. And from there, I've literally used any resource I possibly could to understand life. What would work for me? How can this happen? How can I unfold? What's my life going to look like? Obviously, my life wasn't going too well if you're 17 years old getting waived over to adult court. If fifth grade's the last thing, and somebody mentioned dyslexia earlier when we were chatting. So I recently, I've fifth grade. If you're that's your last grade you graduate, something's not going too well. Like there's a lot of stuff going on for that guy. I am dyslexic. Hallelujah. That's great. Good stuff. And it's kind of funny because I got tested. I wanted to really know at this point in my life. So I went in and I'm like, let's find out what this is. Because there's blockades there. And I got my GED when I got to going back to school any further, there was like this huge stall inside me. So work life has really been my momentum, learning in life. And I've learned how I learn. And somebody said there's tools. Yep, there's a lot of tools, and I use them all. So there was a couple different types of dyslexia that they isolated. It was really cool. But those are the things for me at least where I'm like, okay, now I know that I'm identifying in life what to do. So I have to call it out what it is and be able to fix it, find the solution. So that's one of the basic things. Anyway, I can see I'm nervous because I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but awesome. Um, but those things like that are just the things that have unfolded so awesomely now that I'm able to do that. And the coolest thing that's happening in my life right now, I've mentioned when I first got on that we're in Florida right now. We bought an RV. I have a wife and two lovely children. I'm a late starter. It took me a long time in recovery and in life to even see that I wanted kids, even see that I wanted to be married or committed. Like to grow up to that point and say, you know what, that actually is something I want to do. I do want that. When it takes a long time sometimes. It doesn't happen overnight. So now I can't even tell you how amazing it is to have kids and to be actually the husband, the father that I am. Like, I'm not going to beat my kids. I'm not going to hurt them. I'm not going to hurt my wife. I'm going to be a good person to them. And all of that. Like, for me, I didn't come from that, obviously, but I learned that here. And the people in the rooms are the ones who gave that to me. There was gaps in my soul, and they would sit there and let me cry and let me be a part of their life year after year. And truly, those pieces with the steps and the camaraderie all come together. So anytime somebody says, "Hey, can you take some time and be on this and speak a little bit for us?" And it was funny because Sean remembers something about my story, and it's when I was younger, I grew up very religious, and I was out of the house quite early, obviously at like 11. But they were very religious, and I used to think, man, I don't believe in any of this religion. This stuff is silly. And then they're like, well, Satan will get you. Watch out, Satan will get you. And I'm thinking, well, I don't believe in the religion, but if Satan will get you and he's got all this power, well, I want Satan on my side. So literally, I started to try to talk to Satan instead. I didn't believe in any of the religion. I thought I got a book from, a Bible from Satan. And I thought maybe if this will work, it'll give me some sort of power. That didn't work either. but that's what Sean remembered about my story. And I don't know, I don't even remember talking about that, but such a random piece of information. But that's all I got. I'm it's pretty awesome that you guys have had me on here today, and I love that you've got this meeting and you've had it going on for a long time. So I'll stick around, and I really appreciate it. That's all I got today.